Praise the Lord, saints and friends. This is Elder Adrian Hammond. A while ago, I did a session on tariffs, and I tried to break down what they are and what the impact is to the economy, and why getting into a full-fledged tariff war would be very consequential to to our country. Since we've had tariffs now for a while, it seems as if the tariff war has calmed down some. 100% tariffs are being eased somewhat. Still higher than what they were before, but to be honest, it looks as though President Trump's tariffs may actually do what he wanted it to do. And that's the key here. The idea is, from which perspective are you looking at? Are you looking at it from a business point of view or producer point of view? Are you looking at it from consumer point of view? Or are you looking at it from a government point of view? And I would tend to think that the president's view on tariffs is that it adds money to the coffers of the government without charging a direct tax on people. Now, it means that money is still going to go out from whoever it happens to be, but it's not going to go out from foreign nations. It either has to go in from either has to come from the importers, the distributors, or the consumers. And that essentially is still the jury is still out on that. As you know, or as I'll explain it once more, tariffs on a product means that when someone sells something to the United States then slaps a duty or something that the government would take back with them. And as the government does that, the duty is not to the people who are selling to the United States. So it wouldn't affect China, at least not directly. Wouldn't affect Indonesia or India or Great Britain or any other nation. But it will cause the importers to have to pay a duty to the U.S. government. Now, the importers are U.S. importers. They import from the other nations. And as they import, then the choice, or they have to make a decision. Do they then raise the prices to the distributors? And in most cases, they do. Because they don't want to lose their profit margin. Because remember, any increase in price or increase in price that someone's paying for something, and if you're selling it for a specific price, then the pressure gets on it to hike up the price of what you're selling it for. And distributors have the same question. Now, if they're small distributors, more than likely they will raise the price. If they're large distributors, like let's say a Walmart, or an Amazon, then they may hold steady on the price they charge consumers, but their profit margin will shrink. And eventually their shareholders would not like that on a continuing basis. It has to be that you're trying to outlast a competitor. Of course, if it's on the consumer, you see it as higher prices. So, one of the reasons that were stated for having a tariff was if the cost of goods coming into the United States gets higher, then maybe it will jumpstart production in the United States. Since now, there are goods that are produced in the United States even though because of higher wages in the United States that they make, put them out of market in the first place. Now they're back in the market in a way, but it has to be of a substantial amount. So, and it can't be a one-time thing either. So it's very precarious. But if there is enough of a increase in price that now American-made products are more competitive, then, of course, you will go ahead and start manufacturing more. But what does that mean? What does that mean, though? It means that essentially the burden of the cost of the tariff ends up lying in the lap of the consumer in higher prices. So at this point, many of the large-scale companies have tried to hold the line, again, to try to maintain market share, to maintain a grip on the market that they have. And so therefore, the amount of increase that was, let's say, predicted did not come all the way down to the consumer. So the consumers are doing okay. But the thing that I think many of us forgot, including myself, I would admit, is that for a president who is looking at the national budget and seeing that he has cut taxes or allowed the taxes for the well-to-do and wealthy and corporations to continue past this year or this past year, then what you're going to have is essentially a revenue stream where you didn't have one before. Now, if you had did the same thing in taxes, people would not have liked it because it's taxes. Who likes to pay more taxes? But if you put it as part of a product, then you may think, oh, that's just a matter of it's not the tariffs. It's maybe it's the quality of the product. Maybe it's because of a shortage of goods or whatever it happens to be. But you don't really think of it as a tax on you, although it is. But then the president gets to say, didn't I tell you? We're getting all this money coming in. And he's right. But, of course, the proof will come in whether the money generated by taxes was enough to overcome the loss of revenue from not raising the income tax for those who are wealthy. In other words, it's always this or that, pick this or that. Something's going to affect us in one way or another. We cannot, in this country, live the way that we do without having to pay for it in some way. Of course, direct is taxes, but taxes are very onerous. In fact, if we are in a state that charges higher taxes, we want to move to a state that's lower taxes. This is why, in many cases, people are fleeing California. Because even though there's higher wages than most every state in the union, it also has higher taxes than most every state in the union. So they'll flee to a place like Texas or a place like Florida, which has no income tax, state income tax. Although I'm sure that they get their money from other sources. In terms of Texas, they get their money from oil. But that cannot happen. But that cannot continue to happen forever. So they're going to have to, when oil begins to run out, where will their revenues come from? But in any case, I just thought that it should be noted that the way that one looks at tariffs often depends largely on the perspective or the point of view where they're looking at it. And to some people, but I would say this, to the consumer, it's still going to hit you. It's just going to hit you either now, at one time in income tax, which that's not doing it there, or it'll hit you at some time in the future in terms of higher prices. It's been blunted so far, but if it continues and the pressures on the market begin to really take its effect, then prices will have to raise up. And then what will you do? Anyway, thought that you should know, as just a saint of God and as just a regular consumer. All we can do is put our faith in God, Jesus. Jesus, Lord, put our faith in you, that we will be able to take whatever's coming down the road. But just know, we've only been through year one of this particular administration. You have 3 more years to determine whether it will be, oh, didn't I tell you it's going to be good for everybody? Or we should have elected somebody else. We'll know in time. Anyway, you stay safe, though. May God bless you, may He keep you, and take care of yourselves, and take care of your loved ones. In Jesus' name.